A mother, Diana, wrote to tell me that she felt like she was living in hell, her words. She has 2 small children, and their endless whining was beginning to crush her soul. She felt utterly overwhelmed. Her husband offered no support, regarding her as little more than an occasional convenience for him. And they all lived, to make it worse, with his mother, who controlled Diana and treated her with anger and condescension. And that sounds a lot like hell. Every day I admire these people that I learn of who have never known love, but struggle to survive in conditions that would make many people insane, or would drive them to addictions that would render them little more than objects. Diana learned to feel loved by a few people. It was remarkable. She learned to be more loving to her children, which was miraculous considering that she'd gotten to the point where she only screamed at them to do what they needed to do. She learned to love and teach and to use consequences where necessary. She was progressing beautifully. Yeah, but the story was just going too well. Enter Grandma, a controlling dragon, the lady who owned the house, who began to realize that maybe she wasn't the empress of the universe anymore. She saw that Diana was becoming a real person and a real mother to her children. Now, you'd think Grandma would be happy about that. No. Grandma found that threatening because she wanted to be the grandmother of the kids, the mother of her son, the kid's father, and the boss of Diana, in addition to Empress of the Universe. Grandma could see that Diana was developing some inner strength, and Grandma found that threatening. So, on occasion, one of Diana's 2 children would be whining for something, and Diana would insist that they speak with words or sign language to indicate what they wanted. She did exactly what the parenting training had taught her, and it worked. The whining stopped. But Grandma believed, as many grandparents do, that grandchildren should be indulged. Why? Because the grandparents do the indulging. And the grandchildren then like the grandparents for spoiling them. Like, duh. It's an easy job being the spoiling, indulgent, and interfering grandparent. It infuriated Grandma to hear the children whine and cry, and she would blame Diana for ruining the children and undermining Grandma's control of the household, as well as her peace of mind. Diana's loving and teaching were working pretty well, but sometimes, predictably, she had to use consequences. For example, sometimes if a child continued to whine after loving and teaching, just like the trainings teaches her, Diane would restrain the child in a way that was inconvenient and unpleasant for the child, which is exactly the purpose of a consequence. Normally, as described in the parenting or in the training, that would mean that a whining child would go to their room until they could A, stop whining, and B, come out and say that they were, so that they actually learned something, not just learn to go to their room to manipulate the parent to let them back out and whine again. But the apartment where Diana lives somehow made it impossible to shut or lock a child in a room, even briefly. I didn't get into the details. Diana complained that there was nothing she could do, but I helped her with another solution. If the child continued whining, Diana would use a car seat, like you do when a kid's riding in the back of a car, that she then zip-tied to a bed or other heavy object. She's not zip-tying the kid. She's just putting the kid in a car seat. The child is in no danger. Child seats are, after all, designed to be safe and comfortable. That's what they make them for. And when the child was in the car seat, Diana would regularly check on the child to see if they were ready to use words instead of whining. Perfect consequence. The child hated the restraint, of course, but that's the goal of a consequence, to motivate them to choose more wisely. And it was working. The kids stopped whining almost immediately when the consequences were applied. She didn't have to keep them in the car seat for more than a couple of minutes. But when Grandma saw a child in the seat, she saw, and I don't think consciously, an opportunity to justify her controlling on the basis that Diana was torturing her child. Ridiculous, but for a victim and controller, oh, this was perfect. So Grandma would come into the room with the child being tortured in the child seat, where Diana was sitting and softly speaking to the crying child. Everything was going perfectly, and she would scream at Diana in front of the child. One time, hit her and ordered her to let the child out of the seat. Diana didn't know what to do, so she called me and asked for help. I told her to go back into the room where Grandma had taken over and to say, "I'm the mother of this child. I'm taking care of this," in exactly that tone. Diana said, "What if she keeps yelling and hitting?" "You keep saying the same words. I'm the mother of this child. I'm taking care of this." And you tell her that if she hits you again, you will call what is known as the police. Because she's assaulting you. She doesn't get to do that in her own home either. Diana did it. She needed direction and some confidence. Grandma backed off. She needed to know that even though she owned the home, Diana was the mother of these young children. And Diana said, "But what if my daughter whines and I'm not in the same room and Grandma just gives her the toy or the food she's whining for? Won't that confuse my daughter?" "Yes." "So here's what you do. Picture the scene happening. You hear your daughter whine in the next room, and if possible, you get there first to deal with the child." I have this scene in my head of Grandma and Mother racing to the child and bashing heads right in front of the kid, but that's just because I have a strange sense of humor. What if Grandma gets there first and gives the child what she wants? Don't interfere with Grandma being rotten and spoiling the child. It will just cause a conflict that Grandma will win, for one thing, and that will frighten your daughter. So don't get into a fight in front of the kid. Then you leave the room and you return. And when you come back, you take from your daughter the object Grandma gave her. Diana said, terrified, "Even if Grandma's in the room?" "Yes, you're the mother. You say to your daughter, 'I heard you whine for this.' See, you're not stopping Grandma, but you're being the mother. You say to your child, 'I heard you whine for this,' and you know you can't have what you whine for. So if you want this back, use your words. You require your child to ask. Grandma will slowly get the point the more you do this, especially if she sees your confidence. You can't interfere with Grandma, but you can change what she's done." She called me, Diana. She said, "This morning when my mother-in-law heard my son crying and realized he was in the child seat, she got angry at me again. I was so afraid, but I told her what you said about how I'm the mother and I'm handling this. I felt confident because you had talked to me. And Grandma stopped. And she has stopped interfering. It took some courage on my part, but it worked. Eventually, if Grandma keeps interfering, which I doubt that she'll do, you might have to tell her that if she keeps interfering, you will limit the time she can spend with them. That will be motivating. But I don't think you'll have to do that. She'll sense your confidence, that you're not weak, that you can't be bullied." And Diana said, "I'm happier and stronger. The kids are whining less. My mother-in-law is unhappy with me, though." And I said, "Hasn't she always been unhappy with you?" She laughed. She said, "I think I'm going to keep this up. If you are the parent of a child, you cannot give that job up to anybody. Not the internet, not their peers, not smartphones, and not grandparents. It's your job, and your children need you to do it."